Today I'm going to be ranking my top 10 favorite vampire films. With Renfield now in theaters, I figured now's as good a time as ever to do this. Now I'm sure there are plenty of movies that deserve to be on this list that won't be, and maybe a few that will surprise you. But as always, this is purely subjective. Keep in mind, if you haven't seen some of these movies, this might contain minor spoilers. Also, there are a few vampire films that are steaming piles of garbage that I absolutely refuse to speak about. So without further ado, kicking off this list at number 10, Renfield. Even though it's in the 10th spot, I sort of can't believe it's in my top 10 at all. Just because of how new this movie is, and because maybe there could possibly be another movie that'll fit this spot better. I don't know. Maybe with time this will change, but one thing for sure is that I loved every second of this movie. I simply had fun with it. I just reviewed this movie, so I won't really go into why I love it. But I will say, I'm not at all sorry about so quickly putting this one in my top 10 favorite vampire films. Coming in at number 9, From Dusk Till Dawn. This movie is sort of ridiculous in the best way. In many ways, it's one of those movies that's so bad it's good. But beyond some of the over-the-top nonsense this movie has to offer, like the vampire band playing instruments made out of humans and Tom Savini's crotch gun, it's still a really solid movie. Now, to this day, I really can't put my finger on what makes this movie so great, but I do know that I've always enjoyed everything it has to offer. Even at its worst, it's still great. Coming in at number 8, Bram Stoker's Dracula. I don't know if it's because I first watched this movie when I was far too young to see it, but it absolutely compelled me. I remember first thinking to myself, why does Lydia Deetz look so different? I thought the same thing in Edward Scissorhands. But then I remember just being sort of captivated by the overall tone of this movie. Now, I don't want to say this movie is an absolute artistic masterpiece, but I definitely saw it as one when I was a kid. And to this day, I can't say I feel too different. To me, this movie will always be one of the best depictions of Count Dracula. Coming in at number 7, Interview with the Vampire. This movie is popular amongst the genre for good reason. For me, this is just one of those movies that you can't help but appreciate everything it executes well. And it executes many things well. Amongst them is the story itself, which becomes more intriguing as you go. Top it off with some iconic performances by some of the best actors to ever grace our screen, and you've got yourself an amazing film. Coming in at number 6, Underworld. Early 2000s stylistic action. It was quite a thing. It really was hit or miss, but when done well, it was a pretty solid hit. This movie really captured a dark yet striking tone. The war between vampires and lycans always fascinated me, even more so in this movie because I just enjoy how it showcases it. The movie is just an overall standout in the genre, and is a great balance between dark and ominous and action-packed. Also, you're insane if you didn't have a crush on Kate Beckinsale as Celine. I mean, come on now. Coming in at number 5, Let Me In. Now, I've been tossing back and forth between which movie I like more. The original Swedish film released in 2008 titled Let the Right One In, or 2010's American remake titled Let Me In. And as much as I like the original, I'm going with the remake. Both movies are about 95% similar. But this remake shows that just because you don't have to fix something that isn't broken, doesn't mean you can't polish it. And it does just that. Showcases and executes everything the original does, but in certain ways improves it all. Especially the overall vampire design was much creepier than the original, which I very much appreciated. And this remake was directed by Matt Reeves. That alone gets a huge plus. Coming in at number 4, Blade. It really wasn't until the first X-Men film was released in 2000 that most people saw the potential in comic book films. Most of them were viewed as either a joke or targeted for children. So the fact that this movie was released before that, it's kind of crazy. This is an R-rated comic book film about a badass vampire who hunts and kills evil vampires. With an overall tone that balances its humor and its darkness, the action is entertaining as well. And I love that this movie feels like a perfect middle ground between a solid comic book film and a solid vampire film. Coming in at number 3, Red Blood Sky. Definitely one of the most different films on this list. I went into this movie blind the first time I watched it. I knew nothing about it, besides it was about a group of people hijacking a plane. That was it. It never even dawned on me that this was going to be a vampire film. So you can only imagine my surprise when it was revealed that the primary character is in fact a vampire. And the hijackers might be in danger as well. It was such an intriguing twist to such a unique movie. And this movie had me pretty anxious in some scenarios too. Because it's not exactly easy to predict just how certain moments are going to play out. That alone made me love this movie. Top it off with a grounded yet terrifying take on vampires, and you'll find yourself on quite a thrilling ride. Coming in at number 2, 30 Days of Night. So you're in a small town in Alaska. The weather is just below temperature, with blizzards just storming in, and the sun is about to set, but won't rise again for another 30 days. Should be fine, right? What else is there to prepare for? Nothing. Unless it's a group of the creepiest, bloodthirsty vampires you can imagine, who will stop at nothing to clear out the entire town. This movie puts one of the best emphasis I've ever seen on just how terrifying vampires can be. From the setting, to the gore, to the design of the vampires themselves. The entire movie feels like a nightmare on screen, in the best way, and is a more than worthy adaptation of the graphic novel. Now before I get to my number 1, I'd like to mention 5 other vampire films that I enjoy. First being Nosferatu, 1931's Dracula, 1985's Fright Night, Daybreakers, and Queen of the Damned, mainly for Aaliyah's performance. Now at the number 1 spot, my number 1 favorite vampire film. You can probably guess this one. It's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. That's right. Coming in at number 1, The Lost Boys. One of the most beloved and iconic vampire films of all time. Easily a fan favorite. It almost feels cliche to pick this one as my number 1 favorite, but I absolutely do not care. This is the movie that made me find vampires cool, and ultimately made me love them. Now I don't want to say this is the best vampire movie ever made either. I really don't know what people consider that to be anyway. But my genuine love for vampires all stems from this one movie. It's fun, it's funny, it's weird, it's got that 80s charm, the cast is pretty stacked, and when it comes to its horror, it really does deliver. As a horror film, it's iconic, and as a vampire film, it's my favorite thing in the whole world. So there you have it, my top 10 favorite vampire films. What are some of your favorite vampire films? Let me know down below. I really appreciate your time. It means more to me than you'll ever know. And as always, I'll catch you on the next one.